Look at Scottie Pippen. Doesn't he look happy? I mean, why wouldn't he be? Here he just won his 6th title in 8 years with the Chicago Bulls. Well, there's pain behind those eyes, buried deep down. That pain was caused by this guy, and sometimes this guy. This guy didn't help, and even this guy caused some issues. Come with me. It's time for the beef history between Scottie Pippen and the Chicago Bulls. Scottie Maurice Pippen only became a Chicago Bull because GM Jerry Krause liked him so much. Krause started his career as a scout and was best known for discovering Earl Monroe back in the 60s. And in 1986, when the NBA director of scouting told everyone, hey, this kid Pippen from mid-size NAIA school Central Arkansas is worth checking out, Krause was the only one who listened. When Pippen eventually got a chance to impress other teams at pre-draft camps, Krause played his best defense to keep Pippen secret. At the Aloha Classic in Hawaii, a friend of Krause took young Pippen on a sightseeing tour, perhaps with the goal of making him unavailable to talk with other GMs. But Pippen made all-tournament teams and won camp dunk contests, thus he got noticed. The Bulls had the 8th pick in the draft, and Krause worried Pippen might get snatched up before that. So he made a deal with Seattle. They'd draft Scottie 5th and then trade him to Chicago. On draft night, Krause celebrated with champagne. His second order of business was signing a contract with the outstanding prospect he worked so hard to get. Shouldn't be too complicated. Except Krause said Pippen should be paid like an 8th pick, even though he was a 5th pick because Chicago had the 8th pick. But Krause made a deal for him to be picked 5th because he thought Pippen was more valuable than an 8th pick. It's hard to follow the logic, and I'm not so sure Krause was negotiating in good faith. While the contract was being hammered out, Pippen missed 9 practices. Kind of a big deal since he was competing with Brad Sellers for a starting spot. Krause's penny-pinching and logical leaps bothered Pippen, but he didn't make a big deal about it at the time. He was new in the league. And he still ended up with more money than he'd ever seen before. Okay, so, contract out of the way, smooth sailing. Well, turns out Coach Doug Collins planted quite a few seeds of beef once the season got underway. It started with Pippen not winning that starting spot, which has never endeared a player to a coach. It continued with Collins' jealousy-inducing treatment of Michael Jordan. At age 23, Jordan led the league in scoring, was a perennial all-star, and was in commercials for shoes and food and cars and women's hair products. He was generally beloved. Jealousy was in the air, with or without Collins, but the coach didn't make it any better. He designed the Bulls' offense as everyone out of MJ's way, and he let MJ skip practices, which Scottie took as an implication that Jordan worked harder than everyone else. Then there was Collins' less-than-nurturing style. Even when Collins did try to be nurturing, Pippen just felt belittled. During the playoffs, Collins decided to start Pippen. Good news. But he didn't tell Pippen until just before game time because he didn't want Pippen to get in his head about it. Scottie was happy to start, but he was also like, I'm not a child. So Collins and Pippen didn't see eye to eye, but the biggest beef tenderizer of Pippen's rookie year had to do with his back injury. From January on, Pippen complained about excruciating back pain. The Bulls trainers didn't see anything in his x-rays and told him he needed to stretch more. Collins expected him to play through it. Clearly, the team didn't think Pippen was very hurt. After his rookie season, Pippen got a second opinion. He had a herniated disc and needed surgery. To be clear, not something stretching could fix. The Bulls really pooched that one. But Scottie recovered and only had to miss a handful of games at the start of the 88-89 season. Despite the resentment building up inside him, Pippen played well. And in his 3rd season, things started to look up. Collins was out, and Phil Jackson, the Bulls' assistant with a CBA title, was in. The ISO Jordan offense was out, and the team-oriented triangle offense was in. The harsh critiques of every little mistake were out, and patience and guidance were in. Feeling respected, Pippen continued to improve and became an all-star. Sounds like a fun season with nothing to be upset about. Except the whole jealous of Michael Jordan thing. Pippen even thought the Bulls' scorekeepers favored Jordan over him. Luckily, there wasn't enough strife to mess up the Bulls, who lost just 2 playoff games on their way to the 1990 Eastern Conference Finals, where they went to 7 games with familiar playoff foe Detroit. Unfortunately, in Game 7, Scottie got a migraine so bad his vision blurred. He played terribly, and Chicago's season ended. Fans and the media blamed Pippen. Some even suggested he faked the migraine. And hey, if he was in so much pain, why didn't he sit out? In the wake of the loss, the Bulls believed and defended Pippen. How different from when they told him to stretch his herniated disc away. So, going into the 1991 season, Pippen and the Bulls looked like they were on the same team. Well, of course they looked like that. You know what I mean. They weren't beefing. Scottie decided the time was right to renegotiate his rookie contract. He was entering the last 3 years of the deal, but those final 2 years had an option, which meant if he got injured, the Bulls could cut him loose. Essentially, Scottie had no security for those last 2 years, and he kinda needed security. Scottie Pippen grew up poor in small-town Arkansas. His mother, father, and 11 siblings lived in a 2-bedroom house without a telephone. After signing his rookie contract, he bought the land around his family home and built a large house for his mother, a park, and a bunch more houses for other family members. So yes, a secure contract was important because money could make his family's life more comfortable, but there was even more to it than that. 2 of Scottie Pippen's immediate family members became paralyzed during his childhood. 2 separate, random, horrible moments changed their lives forever. His older brother Ronnie was hurt during gym class. It's reported as a wrestling match accident, but Scottie says it was actually a sucker punch from a bully. Either way, Ronnie was in a wheelchair for the rest of his life. Caring for Ronnie, feeding him, bathing him, lifting him, became part of life in the Pippen household. And I'm afraid there was more tragedy on the way. When Pippen was in 8th grade, his father had a devastating stroke. Suddenly, there were 2 wheelchair-bound family members to care for under the Pippen small roof. A decade later, here was Scottie, providing for his family with his physical abilities, but also keenly aware of just how quickly and randomly those abilities, and even more basic ones like walking and talking, could be snatched away. As you can imagine, the option on those last 2 years of his contract made Pippen uniquely uncomfortable. Plus, there were non-family reasons Pippen wanted a new deal. He was clearly the Bulls' second-best player, yet he was their 6th highest paid. And around the league, other guys from the '87 draft were restructuring their contracts to the tune of $3 million or more per year. As it stood, Scottie was set to make around $1 million each of the next 2 seasons. Let's get that new deal. Krause and owner Jerry Reinsdorf were like, sure, no problem. We'll get it done by Christmas. Scottie had a nice start to the 90-91 season. He led the team in blocks and assists and was second in scoring, rebounding, and steals. But Christmas came and went with no new contract under the tree for little Scottie. At the end of February, little Scottie lost his patience. He told the world the Bulls were stalling on his contract, jerking him around and lying to him. Why weren't Krause and Reinsdorf negotiating with Pippen? Because of this lanky fellow. The whole season, Krause had been heavily recruiting Toni Kukoc, a 6'10", 22-year-old Croatian star who Krause predicted would be the Bulls' second-best player when he eventually joined the team, even though that seat was already taken. With the hopes of enticing Kukoc away from European basketball, Krause was waving all the Bulls' available cash in front of him, so Krause couldn't go promising that money to Pippen in a new contract. At the end of March, Krause and Reinsdorf still weren't negotiating with Pippen, but they did fly to Europe to try to woo Kukoc. Pippen went back to the press and, at times, sounded a little less petulant. Kukoc ended up turning down the Bulls. Good news for Pippen. The big obstacle to his contract was out of the way. But talk was still slow. Krause offered Pippen a 6-year, $15 million deal, but Pippen rejected it. Perhaps because the Bulls had reportedly offered Kukoc a slightly better deal. Pippen continued his trade demands, and since he hadn't gotten management to budge the first time around, he upped the ante, threatening to let their conflict affect him on the court. This was a lofty threat because the Bulls were title contenders. Unless, of course, Scottie Pippen was too upset to play well. But Pippen didn't end up letting management take him out of his game. The Bulls lost just once in the playoffs as they marched to the finals. With a title so close, Pippen no longer wanted to talk about his contract troubles. And on June 12, 1991, the Chicago Bulls won their first NBA championship. Pippen was obviously a huge part of the title. His final numbers were great, and he played stifling defense on the one and only Magic Johnson. Oh, in all the excitement, I nearly forgot to mention, Pippen had a new contract at this point. He signed it after Game 2 of the finals. It seems an odd time to sign a contract, especially after Pippen said he didn't want to be distracted. So, what happened? Well, according to NBA rules, teams that had money under the salary cap had to use that money before the last game of the finals. The Bulls had money under the salary cap. Remember, they put it in a gift basket for Toni to pick up in Chicago if he ever chose to come. But he didn't. So the Bulls still had that money available, and it wouldn't roll over to the next season. So they spent it on Pippen before the deadline passed. The new contract had the Bulls on the hook to pay Scottie a total of $18 million through the '98 season. The deal increased his salary and wasn't so bad in the short term, but it was a really long contract. Pippen's agents told him it was too long. Krause later claimed he told Scottie not to sign because it was too long, and said he would not negotiate once it was signed. But as we've discussed, Pippen needed a contract with security, and he needed it before the option kicked in on his rookie deal, so he signed. With the contract out of the way and a ring, things were good for a while. In the '92 season, Krause was actually kind to Pippen. Scottie struggled in the Eastern Conference semis, to a point where fans were booing him and the press was wondering, is it headaches again? Krause shut down that speculation right away. He even tried to gently console Pippen in the locker room after a rough Game 5. That scene made it look like their beef was dead, buried, and forgotten. I guess that's what happens when you're trying to win repeat championships. Which, by the way, they did. Feels weird not to live in this moment a bit. But this series is called Beef History, not we won another championship, we're too happy to be mad right now history. And besides, Pippen would soon show us on the world stage the beef was merely dormant. He had not forgiven Krause. In the summer of '92, Pippen was off to the Barcelona Olympics. Where? Look at that. He'd get to play against Krause's projected second-best Bull. For Pippen, the game wasn't USA versus Croatia or even Pippen versus Kukoc. It was Pippen versus Krause. Pippen and Jordan swarmed Kukoc relentlessly, destroying him. Krause didn't respond directly to Scottie's demonstration, and he was definitely still interested in recruiting Kukoc. But the GM did tone down his enthusiasm when discussing the Croatian later in the summer. The following season, Chicago three-peated and crossed into dynasty territory. And once again, we're going to skip over the celebrations and happiness to October. Michael Jordan retired, which some children at home took as a personal betrayal. No need to say who, because I'm over it. Anyway, Scottie Pippen suddenly found himself in a position to be the leader of a dynasty. Out of Jordan's shadow, he relished the opportunity to be the guy. Predictions had the Bulls dynasty falling, and Scottie had the opportunity to prove them wrong. The season started off great. In late December, Chicago went on a 10-game winning streak that made people think they actually could compete for a fourth title. Pippen led the team in all statistical categories and enjoyed a newfound appreciation. But that streak left the team exhausted. It was snapped by the Hornets in a 20-point blowout. Shortly after that, Chicago fell hard to the Magic. These were big losses to potential playoff teams, so maybe there wouldn't be a fourth championship after all. A few days later, the Knicks, who were considered the Bulls' biggest obstacle in returning to the finals, acquired Derek Harper to replace the injured Doc Rivers. The losses, coupled with New York instantly filling a hole in their backcourt, left Pippen frustrated. Why hadn't Krause filled the MJ-sized hole in the Bulls? Pippen was playing 40-plus minutes a game and maybe, just maybe, realizing being the guy was more responsibility than he wanted. He carped that it was Krause, not him, who held the Bulls' potential in his hands. While Pip was the most outspoken, Phil Jackson also wanted Krause to pick up a strong shooting guard. But Krause didn't think he needed to. And it's not like he'd done nothing this season. He had finally signed Toni Kukoc back in the fall. Doesn't that make you feel better, Scottie? Sorry, that was mean. As the '94 trade deadline approached, some talented players were available, but Krause made 0 moves. So Jackson moved Pippen to shooting guard, then he moved Toni Kukoc into the starting lineup at the 3. This did not improve Pippen's mood. Before a home game against the Cavs at the end of February, Pippen lashed out at Krause again. And the Bulls went on to play poorly. In the third quarter, the Cavs were up by 18, and the Chicago fans booed. Though the boos were directed at the whole team, Pippen, the leader, felt the boos were intended for him, and he felt that wasn't fair. After the game, Pippen said, "I've never seen a white guy get booed in the stadium." Bulls management was less than happy with their star implying their fans were racist. Krause wrote an apology for Pippen to sign, and it was in papers the next day. It basically said Pippen didn't really think fans were racist, he was just upset from the loss. But here's something interesting. The Krause-authored statement covered another topic too. It said, "I also made some statements about Jerry Krause and my teammates, which I now realize I said in the frustration of a losing game, and I realize that the statements were not true." Looks like Krause took advantage of the situation to force Scottie to take back his criticism. There were some clues that this statement wasn't a true reflection of Scottie's feelings. Mainly, his most recent anti-Krause comments came before the Cleveland loss. Despite the drama, Pippen and the Bulls had a pretty solid season. They defied expectations with 55 wins. In the opening round of the playoffs, they got revenge on Cleveland. Against the Knicks in the Eastern Conference semis, they fell behind 2-0. Game 3 was not Pippen's finest hour. With 1.8 seconds left and the game tied, Chicago called timeout. Jackson drew up a play for Kukoc, not Pippen. But it was Scottie's turn to be the guy, remember? Pippen took the play call as a personal insult. Cursing Jackson, he sat down and refused to enter the game. Chicago had to call a second timeout to sub someone in for him. Kukoc hit the shot, so at least there's that. But the game winner didn't lead headlines in the days that followed. The press maligned Pippen for self-benching. The guy quit on his team. From Pippen's point of view, it wasn't that simple. His team had been shoving him down ever since he was a rookie. Some of that was kind of minor, a sensitive player getting his feelings hurt. Some of it was straight up a team treating him with little to no respect. It was bound to culminate in something ugly. Pippen wasn't innocent. He was jealous, dramatic, and immature. Both sides have fault in this beef. Now, we know Scottie Pippen did eventually win 3 more titles with the Bulls. So, how'd they get past this dark moment? Did they find some peace, learn to respect and understand each other? Nope. There's still years and years of beef on the bone, with more lies, slights, trade demands, and even a bus fight. There's another serving of beef on the way. Thank you for watching Part 1 of Scottie Pippen vs. the Bulls. Part 2 is coming your way in 2 weeks. In the meantime, you can watch these other videos that I picked especially for you, though I did have to make some assumptions about who you are and what you like. So, sorry if I blew it. For Secret Base, I'm Clara Morris. Good night and good game.